G'day guys, it is the coach here. Hope you are all living large in the play garden. I am here with measured gaming expert, legend of the field, planter of the seeds of Nurgle. It is Tristan Smith, aka Sergeant Smash. I assume you're smashing the beers, but Tristan. I don't want to get demonetized too early, so let's just pretend you're smashing the beers. But it's Tristan, and Tristan is a friend of the channel, been around for a while. Wanted to get him on the channel for a while because he has been one of the few people in the community, at least in Australia, who hasn't been a bandwagoner with Nurgle. He's stuck through it, through the good times and the bad times. Nurgle has gotten a whole bunch of updates in Broken Realms Teclis. You got 3 War Scroll changes, and I wanted to get Tristan's thoughts around how he's been running it competitively. I know you've run it at a couple of tournaments in 2021. So how you're thinking about some of these new War Scrolls, where Nurgle kind of sits in the meta, and how you're kind of building around it. But I might throw it over to you. G'day, welcome. What do the people need to know about Tristan?
Thanks, Magro. Not much. Shout out to Measured Gaming, one of the few regular members of Measured.
Not failed charge. Not the failed charge you're shouting out. You're shouting out Measured Gaming.
I am
Inside jokes here.
They tried to induct me, but they didn't quite take. I got a shirt out of it, but other than that, I think still Measured Gaming. True and true. So been a gamer for a few years now, and recently I've picked up, got onto Nurgle and made up a list, and I think that first list I've stuck with for a fair few tournaments. So it'll be interesting to talk about Nurgle as a whole, and we can go from there.
Yeah, because you've been running Nurgle competitively for a while. I know I saw you around at the Canberra event when I was running Gargants, and you were doing quite well with your BKs. And I know you were doing BKs before that. Blight Kings, not Burger King, for anyone who might be in Australia. Like, we're not pushing around burgers on the table. But, since then you've been really running Nurgle, and I know we've talked a little bit about some of your lists. But maybe, like, for anyone who might be listening to this, thinking about maybe joining Nurgle, or has a Nurgle and they haven't picked it up for a while, what drew you to them as opposed to the other Chaos Gods or their other armies out there?
Initially, I would have been about a year and a half ago. I wanted a heavy infantry army that wasn't Stormcast and wasn't as, ineffectual as Stormcast heavy infantry is. So I wanted Blight Kings, and I went out and bought 70 of them. Before they started getting some love, and thought, this is what I'm going to do. It was just going to be a fun army. It wasn't going to be in the competitive chamber for my competitive armies. And then it just grew when they got some love, and I went, well, I'm going to do it and see what I can do with it. And I think for the first couple of tournaments, I actually showed what it can actually do. If you, with the planning and the mentality behind the army, can really perform still to this day, even though it is probably now the oldest battle tome in AOS.
Yeah.
And
you and Deepkin are like, I think you were earlier than Deepkin, but you are lucky in regards. Unlike Deepkin, you got Wrath of the Everchosen, which is another reason why it's a good time to be a Nurgle player. General's Handbook still points changes, and I know we're on the cusp of AOS 3 if you're watching this, folks. We don't know what battalions what's happening with them. We don't know what's happening with points. We're going to do the best we can, but you got some love in Wrath, you got some love in General's Handbook, then you got more love here, so I think it's a good time to be in the play garden.
They were relatively unloved from GW point of view for a little bit. All the new armies are coming out, they're getting updates, blah, blah, blah. They sort of got left behind, like Deep King and Doc and those early books were in the 2.0 swap over. And Nurgle really suffered back then. It was basically Plague Touched or Thrice Fold, and that was you're really only competitive way to go. The other battalions, and as I go on, I build around a battalion to get a benefit, and I make the best use of that benefit as I see fit. So when I build something, it's around doing one job, maybe two, but very rarely will I try to cover a lot of bases doing a lot of stuff. So back then they were unloved, and as you said, Lofty Evertosen, bang, GHB updates. It's just laid it on them consistently, like War Scroll changes, new hosts, points drops. It was a perfect storm, and I took them and I threw them out and see what I could do with them, and I was quite surprised.
Yeah, what they do really well. You know, they are surprisingly fast. I do still have a gripe that to me, Nurgle is slow. Like, Nurgle should be a little bit faster than a zombie, although seeing the War Scrolls in Soulblight, zombies are also now fast. But, you know, to me, Nurgle is slow, Nurgle is resilient, they are fast, and they are resilient. And I always thought what was really cool about Nurgle is, unlike a lot of other armies that rely on things like spells and prayers, Nurgle doesn't really need it. So in this magical dominance of Teclis and Nagash and a lot of changes and croaks, you can still do your thing. If you get your spells off, there's a bonus. But if not, it's actually not that bad for you. You can kind of do your thing.
Yeah. A lot of it is inbuilt automatic with passive buffs or passive abilities. I've only got one caster, big fat guy. So if he gets his spells off, all good. I get an extra couple of debuffs out there, a couple of mortals, that's about it. But I don't need that for the game. If they come off, they're good. If I can stack them all up and get it onto a target, then it's gravy. But if not, I know where my baseline is, and I know that baseline can't be affected. And that's what I try to aim for. There's no point going, oh, my unit can do this and this, but its baseline is force and falls with no end on, say, 32 more bases with a 1-inch range. Because, yeah, when it gets to that point, it's good, but its baseline is rubbish. It's substandard. So how many games, like you know yourself, how many games do you line up all your buffs every single turn and do that theoretical maximal potential in that turn? Like, it just doesn't happen. How many times I need a 4 and you roll a 3 every turn? I was like, why?
Yeah, I remember one particular. There's been a couple of games where I play like with my gits, right? And the bad moon moves from one side of the table, and on a roll of a 1, it doesn't move. On a roll of a 2 to a 5, it moves 1, and then a roll of a 6, it moves 2. And I have Scragrat, and I'm like, I'm not going to spend that command point. I'm gonna let the dice roll, because I want to make, once it gets in the middle, I want to hold it with Scraggy.
Yeah.
Turn 2, roll a 1, doesn't move. Turn 3, roll a 1. And I'm like, at this point going, no, surely statistics are going to be on my side, and I'm going to roll something that's higher than a 1. Turn 4, I rolled a 1, and I'm like, just, done. But sometimes it works in your favor. Then your 5 fanatics roll 38 attacks out of, 28 out of 30. So sometimes it swings, but you're right. Like, you don't rely on the buffs, and a lot of the buffs are coming naturally on the War Scrolls and the synergies, as opposed to casting particular spells, abilities, prayers, endless spells to get things off.
It's just that synergy where you don't have to work for it, and if you're comfortable with where the synergy lies at what level it is, then you can use it. That squad doesn't get buffed, who cares? You know what it can do. You know what will happen when it runs into something. So you just go, all right, let's do it.
Yeah. So I bring up the rules because I think let's put some context around this stuff, right? So for anyone who be even for people who aren't new to Nurgle, it'll be interesting to hear from a very competitive sense, because one, your games club is super competitive, and you guys, really you guys practice almost on a weekly basis tournament meta, so you guys are very strong. But also from an experience point of view, there's a couple of things that Nurgle gets, and probably the thing that most is maybe confusing or is a little bit hard to understand is this Nurgle wheel or the cycle of corruption. And basically, when the game starts, you basically roll a dice and you land somewhere on the cycle. So how do you deal with the randomness and is this something with the cycle of corruption that I guess a couple of questions here is it something that you plan for? Is it something that when you rock up to the table, you have a certain one that you really want? How do you handle it when you really wanted the 4, but actually you got the 2? Like, how does a wheel come into play for you? I'd love to hear from an experience point of view.
First turn, see what you get. If you don't like it or you can't make it work, the allegiance spell, it gets you to move it to wherever you want if it goes off. So traditionally, you rock up, set up terrain, roll for terrain, size, deploy. Roll for the wheel. I can deal with that. Keep it. Nothing you need to spend to use first turn to get it to where you want. Or if it's one of those ones where at the start of the turn it does something that you don't want it to do, or it's not going to be effective, or it's not going to be used that turn or against this army, take the spell, Feral Genesis, cast it, goes off, move it to where you want, to what you want that first turn. So it's 1 in 6 you get something that you want, but also with the planning ahead, because it advances each turn, that you might get something sucky your first turn, but next turn, the next one up is going to be useful. So there's no point wasting a spell to get it to something you need now, when it's like, okay, if it's the first turn, I'm not going to use it. But second turn, I'm definitely going to use it, so I'm going to save it in my spell, try get something else off, do something else, and I'll just bite and wait and bide my time.
Yeah, I imagine that, you're not going to get the ideal situation every time. And, I imagine something like the roll of 1, which is adding +2 to the movement characteristic of Nurgle, is a good one to start with, right?
Yeah, baby.
You don't really want it in turn 3, probably when you're in the middle of combat. But if it happens to hit turn 4 or turn 5, that also can still be a really good way to score a late game objective. So just because you don't get what you want initially doesn't mean, the game's over or it's rubbish. Like, there's always going to be a time that the wheel can work in your favor. And to your point, I can then change the wheel and get me kind of in course to where I really want the +1 to wound. Because turn 1, +1 to wound is useless. Like, you're probably not in combat. Actually, no. Sorry, I'm not normally in combat. Nurgle, with your speed and your feculent number, there's a good chance you're in combat. Let me take that one back.
Yeah.
I forgot how fast you are.
Yeah. So 1, really good first turn. 2, so we'll go through instead of just going 1 or 2. So extra move first turn. Can get my Blight Kings up to a 16-inch move. So we'll just go through. So a 4-inch base, 3 from the bell. It's up to 7.
That's the bell in the
the fat guy, the great unclean one.
Well, they don't know this yet. I'm
going through. So you can easily get a unit. So Nurgle normally base 4. From buff from a hero goes up to 7. The wheel takes it up to 9. If they have a banner, gives them +1 to run and charge. So a 6-inch one becomes a 7-inch one. So you got a 16-inch move with a 2d6 +1 charge. And you see where I'm going with this.
And this goes back to what we said earlier at the show, is that Nurgle is very fast. And then when we get to the feculent Narmor being able to run and charge, if you start you start the charge, is it within 7? Yes, if you can use that what people call the slingshot. You essentially run to the point of the Narmor. If you can get within 7 of the Narmor, then you can slingshot. If you fail, then that's
So the extra 2 inches movement is is perfect, especially for Nurgle. If you're being aggressive, excellent. If you're being defensive, excellent. So it's never not needed or not wanted. The +1 to wound rolls, that is awesome. Like most of the stuff is hitting on 3s, 4s, or 3s and 3s. So +1 to wound, taking that down to 3s and 2s is unreal. Got rend on that, and it's you're hitting with attacks with on 2s, well, wounding on 2s with -1. It hurts a lot. People go, "What? You're wounding on what?" It's like, yeah, no,
And there's
mate,
not a lot.
playing.
And there's not a lot of ways to debuff a wound roll. You know, you've got a couple of things like the Frost Phoenix, but other than that, like if you're on a 2, you're on a 2.
Yeah, it's very rarely do you actually get a buff or debuff to wounding. The Burging, so number 3, so basically all the terrain blowing up. That's pretty good. I don't like it because it's still rolling dice. So that for me, that's my random one. I really don't like having random stuff relying on or going, oh, yeah.
Can I counterpoint you on that one?
Yeah, go for it.
As an opponent, right, I often have a bunch of 4 or 5 wound heroes. And if I see a mystical terrain piece or an arcane terrain, arcane's a perfect example, right? Or commanding. Commanding is a great terrain piece. If I put my general, who might be a 4 or 5 wound little hero, on a terrain piece, yes, I'm going to get the arcane or the command point, but there's also a chance that you're going to be doing mortal wounds to me. So
it's only
there's a bit of, I know, but when you've only got a 5 wound hero, that when you've only got 5 wound, we're not as all resilient as you, but we don't all have the ability to heal. It can create doubt in your opponent where they go, well, I'm going to not deploy within 1 and forfeit that +1 to cast from arcane or the first command point because I'm not starting on the terrain piece. So it's a psychological trade-off there. That's why but you're right. Like it's only 1 mortal wound. It's only on a 5, but it can actually mess with your opponent a little bit.
And it can quite often be chip damage that can actually be clutch. How many times do we leave something on 1 wound? And then bang, next turn, an extra wound, off it goes. And just being able to clear something up. It doesn't happen often, but it does happen. So it's not, for me, it's not as critical as the first 2. But it does have a utility purpose. Whereas the other one, and this is the number 4, which is another utility one, rerolling Battle Shock rolls of 1 for enemy units is really bloody funny, especially when you're facing demons.
I was I was thinking of my Zench, and obviously, you know, the Zench can put down the Destiny dice, things like that. But you know, forcing someone to re-roll that regeneration, or even just like, you know, like someone's taken damage and just getting a 1, you're like, yes, I'm not going to lose bodies, but actually then re-rolling it and then shit, I'm now going to lose bodies.
Yeah, that clutch occurrence where you've managed to pip something off, and they go, "No, I'm good. I'm good." And then they roll a 1 and say, "Yeah, I'm good." And it's like, "No, re-roll that, mate." And they roll something else higher. It's like, "Oh crap!" And off bodies goes.
Or it might force someone to actually spend a command point. It's just that doubt of rolling a 1 and then it happens to be a 6, and it's just like, it's not worth the chance. I'll just CP it. So again, you're making your opponent make decisions. It's not clutch, as you said, but it's nice to have, especially in some situations like against demons.
It's pressure and it's psychological, like the exploding terrain, like having that there, knowing that, and. Also, I tend to use psychological stuff. It's like, so this turn you're re-rolling all your battle shocks of 1. Remember that. I'm going to remind you throughout the entire turn. I was like, oh, shit. Oh, fuck. And just, do I roll? Do I spend a CP? And I was like, no, I'll just spend it. It's like, you sure? You sure you want to spend it? Yeah, I'll spend it. Thank you. And hit him with that as a means of... I was playing the game.
And then you've obviously got your reroll wound rolls of 6. That one's that's a jerk one too, especially for some of the units that have exploding abilities from a roll wound of 6. So like my Gits are fresh in my mind. I've just played a game with my Gits, and my stabbers do mortal wounds on a 6 based off a command point, on a roll wound of 6, not a hit roll.
Yeah.
So, and there is a lot of units that have exploding 6s, or 6s do, or to wound
Extra
might do
damage.
extra damage or higher rend. So forcing them to do that. And also can mean a lot more units then fail their attacks. And there's no way to really do a reroll once to wound in most armies. So,
it's Nurgle has got a lot of stuff. It's probably got more than a lot of other armies re-rolling 6s, whether it to be hit, to wound, or re-rolling battle shocks. Is a lot of stuff that other armies just don't get access to. So running 5, where it's not even based off a hero, it is just board wide. So all your combats, you re-rolling your 6s to wound is massive. If you're locked up and you've got an army like a board wide units in combat, having that go up is just massive. Like, oh, okay, well, I haven't got re-rolls to my wounds or whatever, but I've got to re-roll them anyway. So you can easily knock a fair chunk of wounds off. And if they get really unlucky, they've managed to get something through. And Nurgle got hit debuffs as well. So, I'm neg to hit you, then I'm re-rolling certain dice in my wounds. And you can easily cheat the actual damage that would have gone through, just reduce it quite significantly.
Yeah, there's a lot of debuffing there, or even forcing against someone to use a command point, knowing that they're going to re-roll their 6s to wound. I might have to re-roll. I might put in the re-roll 1s to get more attacks in to mitigate the re-roll. And then I guess you've got, your rampant disease and your corruption. Your regrowth corruption you can't roll on, so you're not going to automatically go on to corrupted regrowth unless you cast the spell to get to that point, but there's no way. So there is 7 there, and obviously only a d6 roll.
Yep. So rolling your first time up, you can only go 1 to 6, but the spell you can go to 7. So doesn't actually. So if you did say roll 6, you can do the rampant disease and do your mortals to those units, which again is I like number 6 over 3, just because you can pick the units and it's D3 rather than 1. So it's not just a 5 up for 1; it's just flat out D3. And then if you did spell, so this is one of the interactions in the allegiance, that if you rolled up 6 first turn and then you spelled Foul Genesis to corrupt a regrowth, it wouldn't actually work because it's at the start of the hero phase, so your sequencing would be off. So if you wanted to do that, you just stay on 6, wait till your next turn, then it would go off, and then you'd do the spell to swap it again, because it's already happened at the start of your phase, at the start of your hero phase. So you spell, get that off, and then move the wheel to whatever you wanted again, and you can have, say, 3 effects in 2 turns quite easily. And it works the same with rampant disease. So if you started on 5, next turn went to 6, work out the effects of 6, do your spell, then go on to something you actually want for that turn.
Yeah, some good cheeky list tech there, and you're right. And that's where moving the wheel can be really powerful. But talk to me maybe a high-level overview of, and I know battle plans, opponents, situations going to be different, but how do you think about the Narmor and how do you play with it? Is it something that you just think about the slingshot and just making sure that you can get your hard-hitting troop that's going to run and charge, making sure that it's there? Is it something that you're thinking about it to generate summoning points? How do you play around it?
My first tree will always go in preparation, well, for my main list, which is my Blight Kings, to slingshot the Blight Kings where I want. So whether it's the 20-man squad, 10-man squad, or the 5-man squad that's going to get slingshot, it's going to help them. But also back me up on an objective, and potentially make them force another choice on, do I stand near it and potentially cop a mortal wound and shut off my my point from that tree, which are not this is another thing. Not many people realise that, oh, okay, it's only on a 4-up that I suffer 1 mortal wound, but I lose these 3 contagion points, which is, for 1 wound, dude, starting off D3 is massive because my summoning starts at 7. So I roll a D3 and I've got other contagion points that potentially stops me from summoning a squad on first turn just by taking 1 mortal, and that's only a 50-50 chance too. So if you got a mortal wound slug standing near it, it can really hamper me. But by putting it somewhere where it advantages me, I can slingshot onto it and slingshot onto the unit that you've turned it off with. So putting it near, say, a middle objective in the middle of the board somewhere is probably my go-to, where I'm going to be standing around it anyway. So 1, I can bodyguard the tree. 2, I can slingshot off it if I required, and I can summon off it too. So allowing me to put it somewhere where potentially turn 2, turn 3, or onwards, I can summon a squad of 10 off it onto another objective is really good. Chain summoning for Nurgle is still a thing. So if you build up the points, summon trees off your tree, summon another tree off your tree, and onto an objective, and summon a unit onto them, and you've got bodies on an objective. Plus, you've also got additional trees to generate you points. So it's a self-generating mechanic that I really love. Like, some games I'll end up turn 4 with like 5-7 trees on the board, and that itself
and they're not big. I think the thing for me I love is that they're not large on the table. So it's not like this unwieldy terrain piece like a Sylvaneth Wildwood, right? That's so unwieldy to try to get that bubble, right? Because 1, you've got to get away from enemies, but 2, you got to be away from all this stuff. This is pretty small, so it's very easy to pop down.
I worked out, I think the base size I worked out because I got a couple 3D printed. Because for me, like, when you're running 5+ of them, I didn't want to have 5 the same tree. So I got a couple of sculpts resin printed. And I was looking at it, and you're right, it's like 110 by 80 mil footprint, which is not that big when you're considering some of the stuff we've got and other terrain pieces we have, and what they actually bring to the army. You can really put them in a lot of spots, and they're not that like obnoxious to use too. You're not trying to balance models on them or whatever, like the OBR one that's just massive square block and generally in the center of the table, and you try and move a squad of 30 over it, and maybe 10 can stand up, the 20 on their sides because they just can't stand up on the sides. Whereas that, it's small, it does its job, and you can put stuff around it quite easily, and you're not going to be packing stuff onto it because you don't need to. But yeah, it really, I love that in the army. It makes the army, it's another thing that's just passive. Getting the wheel, getting the tree, getting all these benefits, and you don't even need to pay for it.
One thing I will say before we move on from the feculent Narmor is I would recommend people practice their deployments and just get a rough idea of what is the range. I know when I was playing my undead, my Legions of Nagash, and they've got their grave sites, right? I put them on the board and I would practice to go, right, where on the board is the best places to put them, knowing that, I've got a grave site, then I can summon bodies off it. So based on my movements, based on bubbles, to get the maximum potential, I've got to have a grave site, X away from the enemy. And I think, just knowing how fast if you're running plague bearers, what's that base movement? What's the, your musician? What are these combinations going to do? If you happen to get the +2 on the wheel, that's a bonus, but I wouldn't factor that in because it's then very easy. You got to spend a command point on the run when you probably don't want to. because you happen to not run the 2-inch move or the bonus +2 move. So practice, get a really good idea if you're new to this, and then just
knowing the mission too. That's a big one. There's some missions where it's obvious where you put it, and there's some where it's no, I'm not going to put it there. I want to put it here. I'm going to go this way. I'm going to try up the flank rather than up the guts. Or I want to focus, like if it's, say, 8 objectives, I'm going to put it in between the side of, between 2 of my flanks and 2 of their flanks. So in the middle, but off the side.
Yeah.
Well, there's other times where there's just too much terrain. It's like, well, screw that. I'll put it as far up as I can, but it's still going to be my territory. It's not going to be tagged out, so I'm going to be summoning. I'm going to get points off it every turn. And it gives me a backfield defense to summon some backfield screens off it in the future. So it's really customizable, and it just goes to practice. What do I need at that point in time? And then go, oh, well, okay, if I put this here, my army, I can do this, this, and this by having that there.
Yeah. What does it do? What's the likelihood? And then no matter whoever you face, you've got some options because you've play tested it. Don't always put it in the one spot. But you got 3 new war scrolls, and we're not going to go deep into this because you have 2 of the 3 in the list that we're going to explore. But high level, talk to me. Sloppity Bilepiper, he got a war scroll change in Broken Realms Teclis. What are your thoughts? And if you like it, why do you like Sloppity?
I haven't got to running this list just yet, but as soon as it dropped, it was just apparent the buff it got for no real increase. It's just amazing. So most of these buffs now of the new stuff is Hollow Within 14, so twice the magic number of Nurgle, which is Hollow Within 14. It's not bad. And considering what you're putting it on, it's pretty easy. So being able to pick what you want to buff the unit with as 3 for relatively no risk it's just awesome. So
+1 to hit, unmodified 6s do a mortal wound,
+1 to
and
attack.
then +1 attack. Sorry, I said +1 to hit.
Yep.
I was just my eyes are just fixated on the fart. That ripe fart. I just wanted to get through the other one so I could talk about farting. So it was +1 attack, unmodified 6s to hit are a mortal wound in addition, which is cool. It doesn't stop the sequence; it's in addition. And then the fact that they put farting on a war scroll. My love is like a ripe fart, where enemy models within 3 inches can't finish a pile in closer. So they've got to literally go backwards or move away because you've ripped a massive fart. Like this is straight up like Nurgle, you win this game. Like so you've won.
That fart one is quite interesting. It's double-edged. Like it's funny as hell. So enemy models within 3 cannot finish a pile in. So if you choose to pile in, they have to finish closer. So this one stops them from piling. However, if they're still within range, they're still good. If some are in range and some aren't in range, the ones out of 3 inches can still pile in, whereas the ones that are in 3 cannot. So it's situational, whereas you want to try get that buffer zone of them being out of attack range and then rip the fart so they can't actually pile into attack. So it's good, but it's a lot of competitive players will be able to work around it. So it's that niche thing. Oh, also, so that's in, so assuming a multiple unit squad, that does stop big monsters from basically sidling along one model and getting closer to another model. Because if they cannot finish a pile in closer, then it means they can't pile in. So that big monster that's tagging one model can't actually pile in to swing its ass around to get in range of another unit or another model.
That's. I just want to pause there for a second because that's a really good strategy. That's really good list checking. There is that because you're right. Like when you run, and I imagine things like Prince of Ordry and Vampire Lords on Zombie Dragons. Literally, we're recording this on the eve of the Soul Blight being up for grabs. So we're going to see Vampire Lords back in action and Prince of Ordry back in action. And being such a large base, they will tag the side of a unit and then often swing around to tie up another one using its big pie plate. But when you start thinking about ripping the fart and it wants to swing towards it because it's trying to end closer to the model than it was, it means it's stuck within the original combat. And if it wants to get into that second one, they might again have to force a charge, potentially have to spend a command point to re-roll the charge. Or what you might find is, you're really restricting the amount of damage because it might actually push some of those 1-inch attacks out of range, or those second and third ranks that might be behind are now not within 1 inch because you've had to step back a little.
Also, having that, you can layer your removal of casualties. So, assuming you get a line of infantry hit your line of infantry, removing your front row and having your fart active. You died anyway, so take casualties out, but also means that the next turn they're not actually getting as many models within range to hit you back next turn. So you've taken your hit, but you've also done it to minimise that output that happened from being the same the next turn.
Just don't pull back so you're outside of 3. So make sure you've got something least within 3.
Not outside of 3.
No. I'm calling that out just in case people, because sometimes you get overzealous and you don't measure. Yes. So to what Tristan's saying, 100%, you could pull back and instead of deleting your casualties from the back, take it from the front, but make sure you've got at least one within 3 to keep that unit in combat. And when it then becomes their activation or their turn to then kind of come into combat, they can't pile in any further because they've got to end the move. So some good tech.
On a perfect world, say you got 20 plague bearers, you remove 10 at the front row, presumably your 10 in the back row are going to be out of engagement range. Still inside 3 inches, but they're going to be outside of 1 inch, which is a typical melee weapon range, which means when that squad that took the 10 off, it can't actually pile in closer to you. So its 1-inch weapons are going to be out of range, or most of its models' weapons are going to be out of range. So even if only 2 guys are in range of a straggler model on the side or wherever, because very rarely do we have straight lines in AOS, it's still a lot better than having, say, that 10 that hit your 10 hit you back again. So if you can cut that 10 down to 2, 3 models, that's a lot more survivability than, say, even an armor save or something, because it's a handful of dice where the 2 handfuls of dice.
And then, and we won't double down just yet, but then you add the debuffing that hits within Nurgle, the -1 to hits with Plague Bearers. So all of a sudden, you've reduced the amount of combat. And then you add the fact that might be -1 or -2, or you're re-rolling 6s to wound. All of a sudden, you've really mitigated the amount of damage. So for me, when I read Sloppity Bilepiper during the list review of Broken Realms Teclis, I got so excited. I thought that and this Spoilpox Scrivener. I mean, Spoilpox wasn't nearly as cool because it doesn't have the fart meta, but I did really like the additions here. It getting some changes to its just generic abilities, like the combat abilities, but then also you've got this keep count, I'm watching you, which I thought was a nice little combination and potentially a driver to get your Plague Bearers back on the table.
So going back to the other guy, we skipped over one important thing.
All right, we'll go back. All right, talk to me.
So +1 attacks, that's really good because there's a lot of stuff that gives it. However, the second one, Unmindful 6 of a Mortal Wound, is basically the Mortal Wound spell for Nurgle on its War Scroll for free. So you don't even need to get, I forget the name of it now. You don't even need to get the spell off to have that effect on your Plague Bearer. So you're getting that for free. having that on a mass unit of plague bearers or even plague drones is just unreal. No rolling required. It's just okay, bang, you're buffed. Blades of Putrefaction, is it? So be able to get that onto a unit for the cost of just having the hero nearby is just unreal, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's a 7+.
Yeah.
Or correct me, that would stack.
Yep.
That would stack as well. So if you threw down
Yes, it does.
blades plus the early one evening on although this is a 6+ for the spell, but if you roll a 6, then you're triggering 2 mortal wounds in addition to the damage. Whew. Whew.
Yep.
I imagine when we get to the list tech, it's going to be wait till there's more. But let's save more of this to the list teching. But you got there's some of the cool stuff.
Yep.
All right, Tristan's got a little smug look. He's like, "Yep, you don't know what's coming yet." Talk to me high level. The Scrivener is featured in at least one of your lists. Thoughts?
Again, +1 attack. So you're getting one off the Bilepiper. You can easily get one off the Scrivener. Big fat guy can give you +1 as well. So you can easily give a demon unit +3, which makes their base of 1 or 2 each, depending on what the unit is, and go up by 3. And it's just 3 extra dice per model per attack profile is unreal. So stacking the Bilepiper, the Scrivener, the big fat guy on a unit of plague drones, that's +3 attack to every of its profiles. And it's got 3 of them. So that's an extra 9 dice per fly that can go.
And then we add hypothetically blades, and then we're doing 6s of mortals as well. If you happen to have 2 sloppities, then you do the mortal wound as well. It's just like almost all the list sides are starting to come here.
One of these hells, you can't actually stack the 2 buffs. So you can have one. You can pick what buff that unit gets, but it can't actually have 2 or more. So
is that with the Sloppity, or is that with both of them?
I'm unsure which one it is. It is one of them, or it could be both of them. But so you can pick. So you can easily go, okay, I don't need the rend or I don't need the mortals. I'll just go the extra attacks and wave dice it. Or if you hit some heavier stuff, you go, well, screw you. I'm throwing mortals on. I'm throwing rend on. And I'm throwing the extra attack on from the big guy. And potentially a spell. So potentially you're getting extra rend. You're getting mortals twice. And you're getting extra attacks. So you're getting, instead of going all down one path, you can spread it out to go, well, that heavier stuff with a rerollable save or a nice good save is just too hard to crack with unrendered attacks. So let's just beef it up a bit, try eat through it, throw a unit at it, and you can really mince it. So with this one...
I love the ability to have I love the utility factor, because, you come up at a tournament and you're up against Nighthaunt. Improving the rend means absolutely nothing. So, using the tally of blows to get an additional attack, or, doubling down with, I wasn't able to get blades off because I'm up against Teclis. Or I just failed the cast, so I can get the mortal wounds another way. Yeah. So just having the utility factor, or going, look, I really need to clear this unit so I can move on to something. I'm going to double stack or triple stack the +1 attack from different sources to really clear this combat out. So the fact that you've got a lot of utility, to me, that's why I love both of the different heralds.
For their cost, having 3 pickable buffs to the unit that you can choose with it's just, okay, bang, that unit, that's getting this turn. And for this guy, the Scrivener, extra +1 to your save rolls. Never goes astray if you're going to cop a flogging that turn or that battle round. Or it just needs to survive that little bit longer. Or, extra rend. Well, it's going out, and if it takes a bit of a rend with it, well, there you go. You don't mind. You can tailor your buffs per unit to the turn and the job that they're going to do. And then next turn, you're not hamstrung into doing that all again. You can readjust and go, okay, this unit's getting this set of buffs, or this unit's getting that set of buffs. You're not going, well, I have this spell, I have this, and this, and this is what that unit gets. And if I buff another unit, that's what it gets every turn, because I can't actually choose what I do.
No, I like it. I like it. And I love the utility value. I love what it can do. It's just so good. And you know what? If people up against these two and then there's a Great Unclean one, I can guarantee you most people are going to try to degrade that Great Unclean one. They're going to ignore these little heralds. And if they attack these little heralds and they ignore your Great Unclean one, there's this big blob, then, you know, it's a win either way. But speaking of big blobs, we talked a little bit about this off air, and I might just get a couple of cents because I know we've got some lists to talk about. The Beast of Nurgle, I don't know if the points are going to change for AOS 3, and that's why it's a little bit higher. But I think that to me was a bit of a surprise. It was cool to see they got a War Scroll update. They got an extra wound. They got, you know, the ability to fly when they ran away and did that little slime thing. But to me, I thought their price were a little bit too overcosted compared to some of the other units similar to this. What's your high level take on the Beast of Nurgle?
War Scroll, I was really keen for the update and the sneak peeks we saw of the update for the Beast of Nurgle. Wasn't keen on the actual GW model, so in my quest to vary my Nurgle, I got some, again, resin printed ones. I went, yep, I'm going to do a menagerie battalion with three beasts and the snail guy. And that's going to be my fun army where I just spam trees for the entire game. Then they dropped and the points came and I went, really? It's not worth it. They are a great War Scroll. They've got good characteristics. Their abilities are great. Doing D3s on a retreat. Mortals on a charge, being able to fly when it retreats and then charge again for the unit is great. They've got a good save, they've got good move, they've got good wound characteristics, but for 120 points for, what was it, 8 wounds, you're looking at 15 points of wound, and really it's that's pretty rubbish.
I think the challenge that we had that we were talking about offline was the fact that it's all right. Like, it's okay, but when you're up against that 100 to 120 point range, that could be another 10 Plague Bearers. That could be a hero choice. And I think if I was choosing between a hero or 10 Plague Bearers versus a Beast of Nurgle, probably 99% of situations, I'm going the Plague Bearers or the little hero compared to a Beast of Nurgle. I think it's just hard for me to justify adding this to the list unless I had some crazy strategy or I didn't want Plague Bearers for some reason. Yeah,
it's the same. I was really G'd up to run the Menagerie, which is 3 beasts and a snail guy. It fitted well. It was low cost. The old War Scrolls were decent for their cost, but I think they went up like 50 points each.
Approximately. All 3 of them went up about 50 points. Yeah,
so
40 to 50 points.
They went up 50 points each, which is nearly double their original cost. It was, 70 points?
Yeah, I think that was 70 or 80, but...
Yeah, they went way over that 10 or 20 point increase for the extra abilities that it gained. And you can't justify that potential. And again, we're going back to on the 4 up or on a 2 up, it does this. And it got an extra wound. So you can't just go, oh, well, those extra points are justified in that it's going to survive this much longer. It's going to kill this much more other than its original version, that it requires that point increase up to a 120. The Menagerie, so you take 3 of them, so now 360 points, plus Battalion, plus the hero. So you're looking at 700 points. I don't know exact figures, but
To be honest, Tristan, we don't even need to know because who knows if battalions are even going to be around in AOS 3. We know they got core battalions coming.
Yeah.
We don't know if our regular battalions are just going to be for narrative and open play. But I think just going back to the Beast of Nurgle, I think there are just better choices in your lists for the points value. And look, it could be AOS 3 points that we're looking at, and it probably makes sense maybe in the new world. But again, would I rather 10 Plague Bearers? Would I run one Beast of Nurgle? It's probably 10 Plague Bearers every day of the week.
I'd rather 5 Blight Kings for an extra 20 points, to be honest.
Well, I mean, we can go down the list. It's probably this is probably a low. I'd rather a CP and an extra endless spell.
Yeah. There's very rarely will this thing be picked over anything else.
That is my point. We're not going to go through your entire catalogue. Yeah, that is my point. So we're actually getting into the list talk, guys. We're actually getting in there. But it was good to kind of set the scene here because Nurgle, it's been such a long time since you got an update. Things have changed. I really wanted to get a bit of a robust look at how the list has evolved and how some of the things that have come into play have manipulated or influenced your list tech. So to kick things off, the first one we're going to look at is, so this is coming from Wrath of the Everchosen. This is not coming naturally from your book. This is coming from the supplement because it gave you a bunch of them, the Drowned Men, the Blessed Sons. There was a whole bunch of things that came for you. Yeah?
Yeah. This one and the other hosts I run were super battalions in the original book, but they've turned them into actual hosts. So the actual Nurgle book still has a battalion for the Wanderers and the Blessed Sons, but the actual hosts now are basically the new iteration of those things that they initially started in the book.
So what of the Wanderers, the magnificent. So we got the Wanderers. We're just going to call them the Wanderers now.
It makes it easy.
Sorry, Wood Elves, you've lost the Wanderers keyword. It's been too long. But of this sub-allegiance here, so we've got this in the Wrath of the Everchosen. You're going to get yourself an ability. You're going to get some command ability, a command trait, and an artifact. There's a whole bunch of cool things you're going to get here. Are all four of these things going to be important in our upcoming list, Tristan? Or are you picking out like one or two things here that are just critical?
There's probably two critical things. There's a third really useful thing, and there's the fourth that you'd basically call the tax. So for me, the critical things are the locus, which cutting Ren down to hitting when it goes to hit any of your army by one is unreal. So while
and so just for anyone listening to the podcast, so locus of corrosion while an enemy unit is within 3 inches of a friendly Wanderer's demon unit. So demon that's important. Worsen the Ren characteristic by 1. So it'll go to a minimum of like just negative or like dash. And Nurgle units are unaffected. So if you happen to be in the mirror match Nurgle on Nurgle, it doesn't affect you guys. Not that I imagine that happens very often. But I didn't say it was impossible. I said it doesn't happen often. So you're going to be reducing the Ren. So that's pretty cool. That's very good.
It's unreal.
And that's melee though. It's melee though. It's not shooting. It's just melee.
Yeah. It's unreal because the army is built around. It's your typical slow, steady, bit of a save and dying slow. So anything you can do to increase their survivability is really good, and they charge at you with neg 1 rend infantry. They just go back to no rend, and there's a lot of stuff out there that's just base neg 1. So just nullifying that just off the bat as soon as they walk into you is just it's money really.
And you mentioned there was another one that was really important to your list text. You got locus of corrosion was one. Yep. What's the other?
The command trait. So the command trait targets friendly demon units wholly within 12 of the general is a 6. So that's hit rolls. So it's making you re-roll your hit rolls of 6 when you target a unit within 12 of your general. Now, that in itself is awesome because there's a lot of stuff that procs on 6s. So 2 mortal wounds or extra hits on 6s, whatever. Having that unit nearby your general, getting that buff, and you walk in and you start procking 6s, you're re-rolling them flat out. So that unit that does mortals on 6s, it's not. It just goes, well, I'm hitting normally after my re-rolls. So it's like, well, I've blunted my attack from my rend. I've also blunted my procs by having to re-roll my 6s. And it's like, well, I'm not hitting as hard as I want to be. And you just sit there and it's like, yep, thanks, mate.
Yeah. No, I like it. There's some cool wings, obviously +1 to hit for the artifact as well. There's some good stuff coming out of the Wanderer's build.
The command ability is good. If you know you're going to get hit, so that unit that's neg 1, it's re-rolling your 6s. You know it's going to get charged. Throw the command ability on it, and they're taking D3s when they charge it. So it's only per unit. So if you've got a big unit strung out across the board, and they've got to charge it, and they've got to charge it with multiple units, that's D3 per unit. So not
that could
only
be a big unit of like 30 plague bearers that is essentially like a 1 castle and probably perfect for something like Iron Jaws with Iron Suns or, a fast-moving Stonehorn build. That's a nice little protection to just do some chip damage and then you come in response.
So not only have you laid in your survivability from your rend, like negating their rend, making them re-roll their 6s, but you've also dished damage back before they've even swung. So you've really laid in 3 debuff, let's call it, and they've only just started swinging at you, and you haven't even had to do anything. You just had to be there.
I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, go on.
The artifact is the tax, but look, you can't have everything. You can't have a perfect world, so you take it, and if it works, it works.
So the first list is, so we talked about the Magnificent Wanderers build. You've taken from the mortal realm of Shimon. And what we've got here is, I'll read it out for the podcast friends, but you've got the Great Unclean One, who is your general, coming in with the Bile-Blade and the Doomsday Bell, which is the bell we were talking about right almost at the start of the show. I'm like, we don't know this yet. They don't know the bell. Like, what's the bell? Well, it's the Great Unclean One's bell. I imagine you need like that 80s song. You can ring my bell. That's why I don't sing.
Yeah,
ring my bell. You got the command trait of the Last Gift. You got the Wither Stave. I probably just got like 100 dislikes at this point. But if you're staying along, if you've listened this long, like give me a like for that. That was not my best singing voice. The Wither Stave, and you've got Glorious Afflictions as your spell lore. You've got 2 of the Spoilpox Scriveners. You've got 1 Sloppity Bilepiper who has the Sub-Allegiance artifact. You've got yourself 30 Plague Bearers, 20 Plague Bearers with 3 Plague Drones under the Tally Band of Nurgle. We don't know if that's going to exist soon, but you've got it anyway. You've also got Geminids that comes in at 1980 with 1 command point at 126 wounds. Whew. Start me from the top. Why the Great Unclean One? Why the loadout? We've already talked about the benefits of the Scrivener. We've already talked about the benefits of the Bilepiper, and it kind of ties in nicely with the Plague Bearers already. But talk to me about the Great Unclean One and the Great Unclean One's loadout.
The Great Unclean's loadout is the typical support Great Unclean One loadout. The Bile-Blade allows you to take a mortal wound and +1 to your cast rolls. So take a mortal, +1. So most of your casts are on 7s, and it's +1 to your cast and unbind as well. Paired with his War Scroll ability to heal himself D3 wounds at the end of the hero phase, means you can literally damage yourself, get those extra casts, extra buffs, and then heal himself back up again. And with the other heals from the Allegiance, it's a no-brainer if you're using him in that role. The Doomsday Bell is an extra 3 to your move when they start the move within 7 of the of the Great Unclean One. So those Plague Bearers, they are moving 7 to start with. And with the trees, they can run and charge. So potentially the Plague Bearers can go 13 with the run and charge. And when you start adding in the other buffs, so the Unclean One can also buff for a command point an extra attack to Nurgle Demon units. So he can buff up, throw an extra attack onto a blob of Plague Bearers. Spoilpox can throw an extra attack on, or the Mortals. The Sloppity can throw an extra attack on, or the Rend onto blob of Plague Bearers. And then you can slingshot those Plague Bearers wherever you want, and they can do bulk work. So not only do you have Plague Bearers with extra attacks or extra damage or extra meat to get through, but you've got 30 of them. They're a demon, so they're bravery 10 with the banner. So you lose some. Oh no, on a roll of 1, I get them back. So the break point for getting battle shocking off your Plague Bearers is, you've got to do basically, you've got to do
a lot, because you get +1 for every 10. Don't forget Sloppity gives you +1 to your demons as well, so you'll get +1 bravery there. Just for our new folk who might be picking up Nurgle for the first time, I just want to make one call out with the Great Unclean One, and that is when he stabbies himself to get the +1 to cast, you can't take a mortal wound save against it. So you can heal it, obviously, but you can't stabby roll up a damage prevention roll and still get the buffs. It just goes straight through. You can't get it. Just a small call out for anyone who's newer to the army.
So you can throw that unit, or essentially you can also screen with that unit too by the One Last Gift command trait and his artifact, the Witherstave. Not only are they re-rolling 6s to hit, they're also re-rolling 6s to wound. They're an extra save, their neg1 rend, and when they get charged, throw a command ability on them to do D3 more to them. So you can make that screen unit quite durable just by basically sitting near it and soaking up the damage.
Yeah, for me, like one big thing about the Plague Bearers, which is a love-hate relationship, because it is a really cool rule, but when you fight against it, it just grinds my gears. I did have a game not long ago between a Plague Bearer army against a Gits army, so it was just a -1 off. It was just a minus off, because I had like -2, you had -2, but the Cloud of Flies, like having units that are 20 or more, being -2 to hit in combat shooting. And -1 to hit in. Is it shooting? It's
-2 in shooting, -1.
Yes, sorry, it was the other way around. I was thinking, yes, -2 shooting. Kharadron Overlords will hate you with that, but -1 to hit in combat as well. So there's just so many debuffs that we're already doing, plus the natural inbuilt -1 to hit, as you've mentioned. Mortal wounds. There's so many things that you can do. This unit of Plague Bearers, like a unit of 40 Grots, is much more survivable than people give it credit to, because they're just super durable.
And even now, it's just got better. Like throwing the rerolls to hits and wounds on, throwing the extra save on them, their inbuilt damage prevention roll, their neg1 hit, their neg1 reducing rend by 1. That's 5 buffs right there on that unit, and you haven't had to spend a spell. You spent 1 command point on, and that's it. All of that is this positioning and planning, and you've got buffs on a unit, and they are really nasty. Like you run into 30 Plague Bearers, and it's like, oh yeah, I can mince these, and it's like, well, hang on. Just wait 1 second. Your neg1 to hit, you're rerolling your 6s to hit, you're rerolling your 6s to wound, your neg1 to your rend, charge me, you take these 3 mortals, and I'm getting +1 save.
Oh, and don't forget, you've also got the 5-up damage prevention roll, and that. If I roll a 1 on a battle shock, I get to bring bodies back. So when you stack that all together, and I think it's been a while since people have plagued a big block of Plague Bearers, I think people have forgotten how nasty they can be. And in the current meta, I think they're a really good place to revisit, and then you add Sloppity and the Scrivener,
Yeah.
and this type of build is going to. That's why I was really excited to talk to you about Tristan. Obviously, one, I wanted to join the channel for a while, but two, I've known that there's a rebuild in the demons that not a lot of people are talking about just yet. And if you don't like the Great Unclean one, you can always throw in an Archeon. You know, what is this look like with a Be'lakor in the Legion of the First Prince, or even just a Be'lakor in general who's going to work with demons? Like, there is so many options now that this type of build can go on.
Because it's all passive. Yeah, you are entirely right. If you don't like one part of it, removing that part doesn't shut down the list or the effect of what the army does. It just takes it on an exit off the freeway to another highway. It still does the same job, just does it in a slightly different way. And the demon side of it has been building, and the Broken Realms book really just got it to that point where you can go, I can do what I want to play, and I can still do all this without going, well, if I take this army, I have to take this, this, and this, and I have to do this, this, and this to play that army. Whereas in the Nurgle book now, you can go the mortal side, and you go, I want this, this, and this. Or now with the demon side, you can go, well, I want a big unclean one, or I don't. I'll take a Glotkin, or I'll take an Archaon.
Well, I was just doing the maths, and obviously points may change, but like, you could take this list, drop the Great Unclean one, drop the Geminids, and that's Be'lakor. And you could make this Legion the First Prince. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just so much flexibility, which is why I dig Nurgle. And then let alone talk about the Nurgle keyword when you go to Slaves to Darkness. So, you know what I mean? Like, there's so many great options. But back to what we've got here, and we've got the Plague Bearers. You've got your 3 units of Plague Bearers, 2 blocks of 30, 1 block of 20. That allows you to then unlock some additional points to get things like your Plague Drones. Now, I don't see a lot of Plague Drones. I've seen people play around with them. I've probably seen more of it. What's the other ones? The Pus Goyle Blight Lords? Are they
Blight Lords,
that's the equivalent, but with the BKs on top?
Yeah. The Plague
drones.
drones. So they're still demons, but they're also Plague Bearer keyworded. So they gain all the benefits of all your buffs that I've just mentioned beforehand. So you don't have to rely on 30 infantry bases moving across the board when you can throw all that and multiply its use onto 3 attack profiles on a flying Plague Bearer unit that has all the same things as the Plague Bearers. It's got the banner, so for your battle shock. It's got the Plague Bearer feel no pain, and so they're all the same. You just get less of them, and they just go faster. So they'll be the, oh, you've got something up the back that needs to be dealt with. Well, here's 3 Plague Drones. Deal with it, really.
Because they're 5 wounds each as well, right? They've got a 5 up discussing resilience save. They've got 5 wounds apiece. They can come back.
One can come back.
So maybe this is like an elevator pitch. You know, sell me this idea. Why haven't people been taking Plague Drones, or why would I take Plague Drones as opposed to another block of, like, why not make that 20 back into a 30?
Up until now, until we got the Broken Realms Herald War Scroll changes, they weren't as plug and play as some other stuff. The Plague Bearers, they're immediately plug and play, but I think that hasn't been noticed that they are still Plague Bearers. They still plug and play. They're just a different style of Plague Bearers. So those Plague Drones, they're fast without buffing from Nurgle, but they still get that speed buffs from Nurgle. So the extra 3 movement, the extra 2 from the wheel, the run and charge from the tree, they still gain that.
Yeah. No, you're right, because I was just doing the maths right. You've got a base of 8, plus if you get the wheel, that's +2, so we're at 10. You ring the bell, that's +3, so we're at 13. you have a run roll of up to 6. That could be anywhere from 14 to, was it 17? And then the slingshot charge. So, yeah, no, it's interesting because you just haven't seen them that often. And I don't know, it's because people maybe forgotten, as you said, the Plague Bearer keyword. If it's just something that people don't like the models,
also,
but
it comes down to the old conundrum of, do I want bodies or do I want a bit of utility? So they are expensive. 190 for 15 wounds. So you are looking over it that way. I particularly like them, not in large numbers because they do get expensive, but I've got 80 bodies. If I was to drop out, they give me one small unit of versatility that I can do what I want with. I'm not hamstrung by having, say, 90 plague bearers in 30-man blobs that I have to use to do certain jobs on the game table. I can use plague bearers, the plague drones, to do that if I need. And if I need them to retreat them out onto an objective, then that's 3 bodies or potentially 3 bodies that can move half the table if I want.
I was just thinking like the value of something. I was thinking like something valuable like Knife to the Heart, or even challenging with, Scorched Earth. The speed could actually be quite good. And another consideration, I was just looking at the summoning table. I brought that up on my on the computer. is to get 3 plague drones on the table. That's a lot of summoning points. Yep. But if you need more plague bearers, you can get on 5 or 10 plague bearers really cheaply. So. Yep. So I guess that utility of having it earlier and then using your summoning pool to add more bodies or more of whatever you need might be a better approach than, making another block of 10 or increasing the plague bearers to 30 and trying to bring on plague drones later. You almost lose, because you're summoning, you're not getting the movement, you're not getting the bell in that initial phase. So you're losing
their cost is 190. So to boost the 20-man squad up to 30 is 80. So you can get 20 plague bearers for those 3 plague drones. But as you did mention, plague bearers are easy to summon. One thing we didn't touch on was how we generate summon points. So you're getting start of your turn, you get 3 for having units in your territory, you get 3 for units in their territory, and you get a bonus 1 in each of those occasions if none of the opponents are in those territories. So you get 1 if they're not in your half, you get a bonus 1 if they're not in your half, and you get a bonus 1 if they're not actually in their half of the table, which rarely happens. So most of the time you're getting 4, then you get D3 from your trees. So quite potentially you get 7 points per turn. You summon a tree, you do that all again, but it's 2d3 extra points. So you start getting over that break limit of your first summon once you start getting more than 1 tree. And you go, well, what am I going to spend it on? And summon in 5 plague bearers. Summon off a tree, summon them onto an objective that's out of nowhere that no one's really nearby. You can tag it, you can hold it, and who cares if they stay there and do nothing? It hasn't actually cost you anything to secure that objective with 5 plague bearers. If they've potentially got a deep strike late in the game, summon 10 plague bearers, cover your great unclean one or your general with 10 plague bearers, and go, okay, I've got 11 bodies on this objective that my general's sitting on. You want a deep strike? Okay, go for it.
If someone takes out your Sloppity, you can actually bring in Sloppity or your Scrivener as well. So if someone is smart enough, someone's smart enough to take it out, or you need another one on a different part of the board, I think, that's the summoning pool. I think maybe the only slight challenge I would say is that the potential in the first turn is to get the 7, but it's also probably very unlikely. So I would not plan a list thinking I'm going to hit 7, because still the likelihood is probably somewhere on 5, and you can't do anything with 5 points. So unless you're getting any more summoning points from another area, or you're bringing on more trees quickly from a unit, I think, is it the Snail Man? I can't remember his name. Like if you're bringing something like that to get in more summoning points early, happy days. But turn 1, very unlikely you're bringing something on for
It's
free.
typically 6. So 6 your first turn, you go your second turn, you get 6 again. So you get a second tree in your second turn, and then once you start getting those extra points that you're not spending from your previous turn, that's when stuff really starts picking up. In my experience, where you go, well, I carry over 4 or 5 points. I'm generating this, plus I'm generating that, and you go, oh, okay, yeah, I can summon this on, or I can summon that on, and it starts. It's basically that avalanche downhill. Once you start get it rolling, and you can control the board, it just more and more starts benefiting you, that you keep resupplying yourself with benefits, and they typically the opposing team doesn't have that as well, so their losses aren't being replaced. They aren't getting extra board control as the game goes on. They're losing board control. You're gaining board control, and it just starts building up, and you can grind through to that.
The games that I've lost against Nurgle have been the ones where a late game summon has happened into the backfield, because I just haven't handled the attrition. There was nothing I could do. I was just losing too many bodies, or I wasn't winning the fight. That created space for the cheeky summon over the field. So holding your summoning points for as long as possible. Don't blow them early unless there's a real reason for it. But like when you start being able to bring on, 10 plague bearers.
I'll blow them early to get trees. Because trees, for me, it's the summoning in an actual unit is the one I'm sparingly on. Once I've got a good fast trees on the board, then I'll go, maybe I'll summon in 10, or maybe I'll summon in a couple of 5s. And again, where it's still running the old chain summoning, it's one of the... We got pretty good allegiance abilities, like summoning off a hero or a tree, so we can keep summoning to a chain summon. We also don't spend... What we don't spend, we keep. So we don't have to go, we've got 14 points, and if I spend 7, I'm going to waste 7 like Khorne does.
You're not Khorne, yeah. Khorne is the different one. Like Slaanesh, that's true of Slaanesh and of Tzeentch as well. Just for some reason, Khorne is just backhanded. But yeah, you're right. Just because you spend 7 on the Feculent Narmor and you have 2 left over, that carries on to give you a good start for your next summon.
Yeah, and having that extra come up, so when in those D3s you roll 1s or 2s, and he's like, that's not so bad because I've carried over an couple extra from before, so that essential 1 or 2 that I rolled goes to a 3, so I'm back up to where I'd like to be. And then you can go, I'll summon another tree. Even though you rolled like rubbish, you've still got those couple up your sleeve from the last turn. You go, okay, well, I'll still make it then.
Yeah. I'm gonna fast forward a little bit on the Taliban, because it may disappear. Yeah. It may just be a narrative thing, and I'm sure you could read the Taliban and see what it does for this particular list. But just a real quick note before we move on is the Geminids. Now, I think I know why you've got Geminids in the list. I'm sure the cheeky mortal wounds from the Geminids is helpful, but the -1 to hit and the -1 damage is probably why you're getting it to increase the minuses. Is that why you what?
Yeah, it's another aspect to make people think. The another debuff you got to worry about. There's probably 2 chains of thought on when you take Geminids to go Realm of Shadow or go to another realm. So I've picked Shaman in this realm simply because I enjoy screwing with people's movement. I love it when someone, I need a 6-inch charge. It's like, actually, well, you need an 8-inch charge, mate, because you're near terrain. I was like, oh, bugger. I just seen the look on their face when they fail those charges, like, because of Shaman, for me, is a good pick, plus the extra Shaman benefits. So if you go Shadow, you get to reroll your damage from your black, your dark Geminid, or if you go light, so you can go 3 realms. It's up to you, really, what you prefer. But throwing Geminids out there in a Nurgle army is for me, it's nasty. It's like, oh, so I'm already neg this and neg that, and it's like, oh well, you also neg to this and this as well.
It's like my gits. My gits would get up to a -4. It was just like it was no point when you start putting like different spells. I will just put like a little disclaimer at this point because some people might be wondering what the F you're talking about. In Australia, in a bunch of tournaments, not all, but a lot of them, one of the popular things that are coming up, at least locally here, is so often we know that, the person who rolls the dice at the start of the round gets to choose the sides and all that stuff. We've added a little extra layer to that to say that whoever loses that roll-off or wins the roll-off can choose which realm of battle we're in, which would mean the terrain effects and things like that would be in play. And it would be based off the realm on your war scroll, in your army list. So in this case, Tristan's talking about tapping into the abilities of Shimon. So that's just a little Australia thing. It might pick up globally, but a few of our events now have been starting to play with realm rules, and this is a little equalizer on picking sides, or you pick the realm.
Yep.
Just a little FYI. It's not common. It's not worldwide, but it's a little Australian thing that's picking up steam.
I quite love it.
Yeah, so do I.
Pick sides or pick sides or pick a realm, and now the realms are really simplified now. It's easy for me, I found really easy to take into account. Like, okay, so what do you want? It's like, oh, what realm are you? It's like, well, I'm this realm. Oh, bugger, I really do not want you to pick your realm, so I'm going to give you pick the sides. Like, okay, that's fine. I like that. Pick sides is like, okay, well, what realm are you picking? It's like, oh, well, I'll pick my own realm. It's like, okay, I can deal with that too. How many times I've come across people picking the realm of beasts and giving me the realm of beast spell, and it's like, thank you.
Yeah, or recently I was playing in a realm of I played a whole tournament in the realm of Ulgu because that was what the TO set. So all my Gargants are enjoying line of sight blocking terrain. I'm just like, this is the best. Like, you can't see my Gargants.
Yeah.
Except for obviously flying units. But I think realms, hopefully maybe we will see more realm impact, and obviously COVID kind of stopped that for the world. But that was a little cheeky thing that we started locally that seems to be going quite well. But not all tournaments in Australia, just like it's not some weird meta thing, but it's picking up steam. Speaking of something that's already picked up steam is the Blessed Suns. The Blessed Suns is probably the most common of the Nurgle builds in Wrath of the Everchosen compared to things like Drowned Men and some of the others. This is certainly one of the ones that are more popular. Same question I asked you with the Wanderers is are all of these 4 important to you with your list, or are you taking it for 1 or 2 of these things?
All 4 are great. None of the 4 can be considered attacks. The ability, every one of your Blight Kings blows up on a 2-up. So you take how many Blight Kings, that's how many mortal wounds they are taking just to kill you. So you take 40, take 50, that's 40 to 50 mortal wounds they are going to take, assuming you don't roll lots of ones. So having that go, oh, well, you got 20 Blight Kings. Well, okay, so the sheer mash of getting through 20 Blight Kings. Oh, yeah, so I've got to do this and I've got to do that. Oh, yeah, and by the way, that's 20 dice I roll to do mortal wounds back to you. And I was like, oh, so that unit I had to sacrifice to kill that big block, or those units I had to kill to sacrifice that big block, are taking them back. Battle Shock is like, oh, well, I really hadn't planned for that. It's just awesome. Until you run against another Nurgle army, and it just becomes slapfest, but that's what it is. The command ability, I haven't actually used that much, but it does have really good use. So at the end of the combat phase, while you use it, at the end of the combat phase, pick one enemy unit that took wounds. If the wounds it took is greater than their bravery, they suffer 3 additional mortals. So that's their bravery characteristics, not their bravery in regards to battle shock. So for those things that get bonuses for ranks or for banners, it's their characteristic. So you run into something that, say, Clan Rats, for instance, they're only bravery 5. Doing 5 mortals to them, well, 5 wounds to them in combat is pretty easy. Or while doing more than that, so you need to do 6. So
I was
for
going to say,
command point,
if you only do 5 to clan rats, I think you need to relook at your dice.
yeah, and that. So it's
Weren't
something
you
for,
the person on Bush Radio talking about cooking your dice?
I will not comment. I'll take the 5th on that.
That was a joke, by the way. But you should be able to kill more than 5 clan rats.
Yeah. I didn't cook my dice last weekend for Marathi. That was ridiculous. But the command point for 50 points, basically, which is what a command point's worth, you can do 3 mortals to another unit. So as long as you know you're going to do more than their bravery, you're getting another 3 through for a command point. Which for me, if you plan it and you think about it and go, yep, I'm going to use it, do it, then it's extra damage and it's mortal. So you can easily go through, and it can really be easy to. Also, again, it applies to monsters as well. So not all monsters are bravery 10, whereas if you're doing, say, 11 damage to them, they're generally dead. But on those occasions where they are, those extra 3 mortals can be what makes you kill them off. How many times have we run into a monster, left them on 1, and go, well, takes 3 more?
Well, my Mega Gargan's a perfect example. I've been playing with them lately, and there's been a lot of times they've been dealt a lot of damage and left on like 3 wounds or 2 wounds left, and they're still very dangerous at 2 or 3 wounds. You know, something like, is it the Terrorgeist, or I can't remember which monster it is, you're allowed to spend a command point and fight at the top of the bracket, or maybe it's Ironjaws. I don't know, there's one particular, like, either way, like monsters even at their lowest bracket can still do, I mean, Terrorgeist can still do like 18 mortal wounds off the Fanged Maw. So those 3 extra cheekies could be massive.
You go in, and as I said, not all your monsters and your big stuff that you want to do it on is bravery 10. So if they're only bravery 8 or they're bravery 7 or whatever, doing those 8 wounds to whatever to get over that bravery and then slap on that 3 can really be the clincher of it keeping alive with a couple or it just being dead. And it's something to add. It's another piece in the toolbox that can really be used. The command trait, I love this command trait.
So that's once per turn.
Awesome.
So for anyone who's watching the podcast, listening, once per turn, you can use the double command ability on friendly the Blessed Sun's Rotbringer units on within 12 without spending a CP. So first off, Tristan, just basic, what is at the double?
Makes your run roll an automatic 6.
Cool. So we can already do that. Everyone gets access to that unless you're OBR. OBR, sorry, not sorry. But everyone can already just do that. So what's so special about you doing this?
It's free. So it's a free command, free 6-inch run every turn. That command point that you might possibly use for that can be used on another unit or potentially just be used on that command ability we discussed. So you can throw that unit and go, well, you're for free running 6 and any other bonuses attached to it without even needing to make a roll, and just go, okay, that's my free run for the turn, and this unit is going that far. And the amount of people I've said, oh, okay, this unit is now going to be moving this far, and it's like, what? It's like, yeah, I'm throwing 20 Blight Kings that far, and they're going to charge as well. It's like, hang on. It's like, your Blight King's like, yeah, but when you do it, it's just, for me, using it on your general too, like even throwing it on your, making him run 6 makes his relatively low movement. Giving him an extra free 6-inch run is just nuts because you're still getting that general within range. You still got handing out buffs here and there. It's just absolutely brilliant to use. For me, I really like these abilities that allow you to use a command point for free, even once a game or even once per turn, because that's an extra 50 points in your list per turn that you don't have to account for. If you're getting that's essentially 5 free command points during the game that you don't have to spend.
Yeah, no, it is very helpful, and it was already talked about as well. We've already talked about as well that the tree, your Narmor,
Yep.
also lets you the benefits of run and charge as well. So this is where it all kind of synergizes well. And as you said,
Yep.
it's keeping CP up your sleeve. So
Yep.
I like it. I
So
dig it.
the artifact. Oh, so for me, for this Blight King list, a lot of it comes off the Great Unclean one, but it's all passive. So the Bell coming off the Unclean one, him being your general, him being your caster, him being your monster, makes him a big target when you've only got 45 other bodies on the table. Putting this artifact on him, he's just unreal. Just re-roll all your saves. So...
And just highlight there, it just says reroll saves. It's not failed, it's saves.
Yeah. Melee, ranged, both. Neg 2 end. It doesn't matter. I get to roll. Go through. Oh, yeah. Fail on my first roll. I'm going to re-roll all my fails.
The reason that's... Sorry, Tristan, continue.
So, yeah, what you would have said is, so on reroll fails, if you've got a save characteristic of 4 up, you can reroll your 1s, 2s, and 3s. Whereas if you're having rend and you say neg 2 rend, only your 6s will actually succeed. With reroll save rolls, I can reroll not just my fails, but my 4s and my 5s, which would have been rendered out to a failed save. So I can reroll everything I want to try and maximize my successful save rolls. Whether it just be only save on 6s, I can re-roll everything, not just my 1s, my 2s, and my 3s.
Yes, 100% correct. And I don't want to dwell on this point for too long, but basically modifiers happen before re-rolls. Sorry. Modifiers happen after re-rolls. So so when you apply like a -1 or a -2 to your armor save, that applies after you do your reroll. So being able, we're getting into complicated territory here, but being able to reroll saves is awesome and much more powerful than if it just said reroll failed saves. Because technically, if you've got an armor save of 3 and there's a -1, rolling a 3 is still a pass. Then you apply the modifier, it becomes a 4, then it fails. So it's a bit of a weird sequence to describe at this point. But all 4 of these things that you're talking me are quite good. The great thing as well is obviously this is going to be a really quick one, Tristan, because you have already talked a little bit about this. We've got the Blessed Sons, all the rules. The Great Unclean one is very similar to the last one, just minor differences there. We've got Favoured Poxes, your Doomsday Bell with the Bile Blade, the Foul Conqueror, command trait with the artifact of the Bile Plate that came from the Blessed Sons. You got yourself a Lord of Blights with the Rust Fang. You've got Gutrot Spume. You've got 20 BKs, 10 BKs, 5 BKs, 5 BKs, 5 BKs. That's a total of, 45 Blight Kings?
45, yep.
Blight Cyst, we won't talk about Blight Cyst. We don't know if it's going to be around or not. You read the rules if it still exists in 2 months later. And Geminids probably for the same dealing of damage and -1 to hit and -1 damage. But... talk to me why the hero choice, and then talk to me about the BKs.
So the Unclean one's slightly different build, as in with the command trait and the artifact. So that's pretty much standard. But for this spell, I've picked Favoured Poxes, which I really like. Casting value of 7, 14-inch range. Neg 1 to a unit's hit, wound, and save characteristic until the caster casts another spell, moves, or dies. So quite potentially it will generally be your second spell off the chain, and if it goes off, he doesn't have to do anything. That unit you've targeted is neg 1 to hit, wound, and save until he's dead. So pair that up with Rustfang. So the Lord of Blights goes in, start of the combat phase, pick a unit within 3, neg 1 to their save characteristic for the game. Well, not save characteristic, save rolls. So same with Favoured Poxes, not the save characteristic, just their save rolls. So you're now at neg 1 to hit, neg 1 wound, neg 2 to your save rolls. Your Blight Kings go in. and they got neg 1 rend on them from the battalion. So this unit you're going to hit is neg 1 to their hit, neg 1 to their wound, and neg 3 to their save rolls. Hit them with Geminids, neg 1 to hit, so they're neg 2 to hit, neg 1 to wound, neg 3 to save. If you're really being nasty, Lord of Blights, throw his command ability on the 20 unit, and they're an extra neg 1 to hit. So quite potentially you can be neg 3 to hit, neg 1 to wound, and neg 3 to their save rolls. And it's nasty, especially when you've got exploding 6s. So I've gone in with Blight Kings and neg 3 to an Archaon, and just had Blight Kings tank him and kill him, like 5 Blight Kings tanked Archaon. Quite simply, just because he was neg 3.
And for anyone who doesn't have the Lord of Blight's command ability in front of them, Plague of Flies you use in the hero phase. If you do so, friendly Nurgle units within 21 of it. Until your next hero phase, subtract 1 to the hit rolls. In shooting, if it has more than 20, subtract 2 in shooting. So basically you're bringing in that, basically the Plague Bearer ability, and putting it on someone who's not a Plague Bearer.
So it's neg 2 to shooting if you're 20 or more. It's also neg 1 in melee if you're 20 or more.
Which is exactly, that's the Black King rule. So that's the Plague Bearer rule, right?
Yep. So you can stack that on Plague Bearers, but you can also throw it on Blight King. So you can potentially screen 20-man Blight King squad, which isn't going to be, there's very little that can take it out in a turn. Screen your rest of the army. So they're neg 2 to their shooting, and when they go in, they're neg 1 to hit it. So not only... However, that command ability does change depending on the size. So if they shoot one model off, you lose the neg 1 to hit. So generally, I only use that if I'm facing a shooting army, just to dampen that initial volley until I start losing a model. Once I lose a model, and again, it's command ability, so I don't generally need to spend command points. So that spend I use to put that command ability on isn't really like life or death. I've got plenty of them, and there's not much I need to use them for. So throwing it on that screen unit to really soak up a shooting volley from 1 or 2 units. If I'm lucky, I get through without losing a model. Also, they're 4 wounds apiece. So if something shoots me with that up, and they do 1 or 2, I've still got 20 models in that unit to gain the bonus. And if I'm really sneaky, if they only do 4 in the initial volley, I can throw that on the leader, who has a wound characteristic of 5, and still keep the 20 models in the unit.
I was just reading over the Lord of Blights, because I think there's a rule that I've completely missed, or I've never seen it in action, which is the Munificent Bounty that allows Blight Kings to shoot using the shooting profile of the Lord of Blights, which is a 14-inch range, 1 attack, 4s, 3s, nothing for 1. So if you put that on the 20-man or the 10-man, like that's just another cheeky damage. What? Or they're shooting in combat. If you've tied them up in combat, they're going to shoot themselves out of it.
You want to know the worst news?
No.
The Blight Sift gives that to every unit within within range of the Lord of Blights. So if he's in range,
we're not talking battalions. Battalions might not be around.
The whole unit of Blight King can potentially, or 2 or 3 units can potentially shoot using that profile in the shooting phase.
Well, I guess the key that I'm pulling out here, which is, should battalions be put into open and narrative play at this particular point, you've still got the ability you can pull out of the Lord of Blights. If battalions stay with us and we're still able to use something like the Blight Cyst, happy days, we can continue. But you get a bit of a fallback. I mean, it's not the same, but you got something similar.
Yeah, it's going to be different. So, and we don't know. So for me, I'm just going to wait and see what we get. We might get something different. We might get something that's just totally just gone, or they might not be. There's a lot of rumors, and there's a lot of my mate of a mate of a mate told me this kind of deal going around, and a lot of people parroting that. So it's like, well,
I think the key though is that the blight cyst, this list is not reliant on the blight cyst. It's
It
enhanced,
is.
and should the blight cyst not exist anymore, then this list still operates and is still very powerful.
No.
If it's still around, happy days. It's even better than it is right now. But
No.
It's not change host. You're not reliant on one particular build.
You are. The blight cyst is giving them rend. So
Yeah.
without it, you just become rendless chaff, and there's other Nurgle stuff that does that better. So putting 45 Blight Kings on with no rend, natural, for me is far less than just going, oh, okay, have a battalion and give them all. So if that Blight Cyst was to go, then the list would dramatically change because you'd drop a lot of those Blight Kings out for actual bodies. Because that's one thing the list suffers from, is its lack of bodies. And it requires the Nurgle trees to summon them in. But at the initial game, the first few turns, that lack of bodies is going to cost you. And if you don't have rend to even up those numbers to start with, then it's something you're going to have to take into account for.
Yeah, you don't have a lot of mortal wounds to deal out, so
No.
you are relying on having the rend. So, but again, we don't know what the world's going to look like. I'm just pointing out that it's something that might be around, it might not be around. It's something just to keep in the back of your head if you are thinking about building a list like this. We just don't know, but still, like even without the battalion, it's still viable, but it's not nearly as good. It's not nearly as good as attractive as what you're getting because of the rend. And as you said, maybe I don't rely nearly as much on the Blight Kings, and I step into maybe more of a mixed force. But then if you're doing a mixed force, is the Blessed Suns still now right for me? Because Blessed Suns is really doubling down on the Blight King build.
Yeah.
You know, or does it start to encourage me to take, some of the other Rotbringer keyworded units? So I guess a lot of questions being thrown up, but it's nice to see you tie in the Blessed Suns rules into a list build.
Yeah. It really, everything for this sort of just all gels together. If one of them wants to be removed, you sort of start losing all that inbuilt synergies, and then you have to reassess. But we'll just wait and see. It could be, and it might not.
Yeah, who knows? But it's been good kind of chatting to you, because one, Nurgle is the god that people aren't talking about. Sorry, Skaven, we're not talking about you. No one really acknowledges you as a. I mean, they're not really a chaos god. I'm not acknowledging that, but like obviously Zencha's quite good at the moment. Slanesh is obviously in the meta. You may agree or disagree about their competitiveness, but they're around. Reapers of Vengeance, at least with Archaon, is quite popular at the moment. Yeah. And I guess Nurgle has some builds. So who knows what's coming? Who knows how, as we've talked as well, like Be'lakor coming into play, and maybe some of the builds with the Legion of the First Prince, especially those demonic builds. There's a whole lot of cool. Who knows what else is coming?
There's also a lot in Nurgle as it is. You've got Epidermis, you've got Festus. They've all got good scrolls. So there's a lot of other units like the Glock King, and that potentially in a 3.0 makeup that just suddenly go, okay, well that's going to be really useful, and I'll throw this in the list and see how that goes. So the 3.0 change could actually be really good. You don't know, because there's a lot of depth to the army, and there's a lot of depth to the possibility of the army. A lot of it isn't taken at the moment because there are clear winners in which way you want to take it. But you never know, with a shake up here and there, that something just goes, oh, well, I'm going to shine and I'm now going to be the in thing to take. So, yeah, wait and see. And hopefully we get some news pretty much soon.
So I'll ask you one final question before we wrap this up, and that is the man of the hour, Archaon. I was at a tournament not long ago where there were 10 Archaons in 60 lists. So I even lined them up and filled them all together, and I got to play against one of the Archaons out of 10. How do you think he would go in a list like one of the two that you built, or even Be'lakor, new Be'lakor, obviously? Is there a place with him in Nurgle? I'm seeing a lot of Reapers in Vengeance. I'm seeing a lot of Archaon in Zench. I'm not nearly seeing. I mean, Nurgle was a little bit Archeon, but it's kind of dropped off lately. Where are you at?
I've got two Archaons. I don't know why, but I do.
I've got none. You can send me one.
No. But for the Reapers, a lot of the inbuilt buffs and stuff are aggressive. The sense ones, when you do run Arcane Incense, are more utility. If you were going to run him in set, I haven't really looked into Slanesh. But at the moment for Nurgle, a lot of it is keyworded to not just... the aggressive style of buffs are keyworded to certain unit types. The Allegiance stuff is just keyworded Nurgle, so you can still do that. You can still throw Nurgle up the board with all the movement buffs, but he doesn't get a lot of the aggressive style of extra attacks or rend or other stuff, and he is pretty costly. So if you were going to do that, you go down the same path that the Reapers do, where you've only got minimum bodies on, but Archaon is a far more deadlier, so he makes up for the lack of bodies. In Nurgle, that's probably not so much because he's just base War Scroll deadly. Still a good War Scroll, good damage, good rend, but it's been able to heal him too. So one of the good cross things with Archaon in Nurgle is you nullify Plague Monks and you nullify all Nurgle armies straight away, because he does have the keyword Nurgle. So if you run into Blessed Suns, if they blow up, you can potentially heal off them. You're getting all the benefits of the wheel. You're also getting all the benefits of being not subjected to their debuffs, because the Nurgle doesn't affect Nurgle units. So him having the keyword, you can run in and go, well, I'm not debuffed because I'm Nurgle, and I'm still at a full effectiveness. It's a different take. For me, it's probably the more durable side of the Archaon into a god. But I'd love to see someone do it. I'd love a chance to see a good list and go, oh, well, maybe that's something I'd like to do and give it a whirl.
I just had flashbacks of Britney Spears. She had a song called what should say, I'm Britney bitch, like I'm Nurgle bitch. My 2 cents to what you just said is, if I've got 900 odd points for Archeon, that is essentially a thrice fall. That's 3 great unclean ones, give or take. Don't maths hammer me right now, but it's approximately 3. Do I get better value having 3 fatties, or do I get better value with 1 Archeon? And I'm no Nurgle expert. I would think probably right now 3 fatties probably give me more value than 1 Archeon, but I'm not the expert.
There's a lot of stuff that can kill Archaon in a turn. Essentially, he's still a 3-up with 20 wounds. So
I killed him in a turn. At that tournament, my Mega Gargants killed him in a turn. 2 Mega Gargants pulled him down. Yeah,
can easily do it. So unless you're going Reapers where he's really, really killer with multiple activations.
And he was. I killed the Reapers. But mind you, he put one of my Megas down to 1 wound. I retreated that out, and then I put 2 Megas back into him and pulled him down. Yeah. But the point was that I couldn't do that with 3 fatties.
No, essentially. So your 3 fatties, you're getting more dominance in the backfield and supporting the other units you've taken, whereas Archaon in the Nurgle is basically a one-man army. So he either works or he doesn't. For me, it's just be personal choice, really.
Yeah, and anyone who's watched this show in the past, Tristan, knows that this is not the holy one silver bullet list that's going to rule them all. Season to taste. If you want to put Archeon or the Rodicus, or if you want to have no fatties, like absolutely, I've seen plenty of BK lists with no fatties and, got more Lords of Affliction and more BKs. It's season for taste.
For me, my BK list was seasoned to my taste. I got to a break point of like, what do I want? Now, is that going to be costing? Is that worth to me, say, 5 Blight Kings, and everything's basically break it down to costing 5 Blight Kings? Is that worth 5 Blight Kings? No. Is that worth? No. Is that yet? Okay, yep, that is. Blah blah blah. Take that. But there's more than And like I've had my last 2 tournaments. I've done really rubbish. I went, I think 2-3 in my last 2 tournaments after going 4-1 in like my first set of tournaments. So I've really, it's not like, the silver bullet, this is going to win. It's a good list, and it can do it, but it can also be beaten by unfavorable matchups, mistakes, and just you playing like you, really.
Right, yeah, and it has and that's where a good list is not a 5-0 list. 4-1 list is based off skill and luck. You know, really, most armies should be sitting around that 3 wins, 2 losses, and it's skill, it's practice, it is experience, it is luck that gets you to 4 and even 5. So there is no shame in 3-2ing. And you know, sometimes I remember at the Canberra event, like Chris Welfare and I were both on 2 wins, 2 losses, both fighting for the 3rd win, and I won it. I luckily pulled that one out, even though he tried to double catapult me with OBR. But the point is, like, Chris Welfare's still a great player. Like, just because he got 2 wins doesn't make him a bad player. Just sometimes that's how the cookie crumbles. Yeah. Wrapping this up, do you want to give any shout outs, any final thoughts that you want to add? We've almost had 2 hours of awesomeness. Is there anything that you want to add to this before we wrap this up? My beloved football fans literally kicking off, so I want to go watch them lose horribly. They're going to lose. They're at the bottom of the table. They suck, but I'm here for their moral support.
Yeah. No, there's nothing for me to shout out. I'm generally a nice, quiet guy, so yeah.
Is there a game club you want to say hello to at the very end?
Well, I'll shout out to my game club, Measured Gaming. I'll shout out to Failed Charge, who tried to recruit me a little while ago but failed. The membership.
Probably why I call the Failed Charge. The failed membership charge.
The membership perks weren't as good as what I have at the moment. The salary was definitely way off. There's nowhere near I'd leave Measured for that salary that Mick was offering me. So, yeah.
I don't know, man. I was talking to Mick at Brizhammer, and it sounds like he has some pretty good perks. Maybe you're just getting all the good blessings out at Measured, but Measured Gaming do have a pretty cool YouTube channel. I know Tristan does get on there occasionally, run by the Overlord Joel, but there's always cool games. But go check them out, and they are awesome. I got to play at Vic GT, and they put on a cracking event. So Tristan wasn't there; he was dogging us, and he was over in South Australia with Doom and Darkness. But Tristan, thank you so much for your time. It was really cool to hear more about Nurgle, probably someone who's not being talked about very often. And those 3, but for me, the 2 new war scrolls, the Sloppity and the Scrivener, coming out of Broken Realms Teclis, has really changed the game for Nurgle and brought those plague bearers and some of the list building back into light, where it was just mostly BKs, and BKs.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So it's new, and change is good.
Give it a crack. Mate, don't end this show like it's a Zent show. Like, change. It's all about the play garden and plant those seeds. I don't know what Nurgle's saying is. All right, let's wrap that up. I hope you found that discussion valuable. If you did, give the video the old thumbs up. And if you have a comment or an insight, leave it in the comment section below. The champions over here are my AOS Coach Patreons and YouTube members. So you guys are bloody legends. Thank you for all the support. If you want to know more about the support programs, the links are below down here in the episode description, along with a link to the Discord server, so we can continue this conversation. Until next time, don't forget to name your characters and have a good one.